I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to Warrior vs. Zombie, episode 22. And I have an amazing warrior I'm going to introduce to you in a second, Barbara Cole Salmeron. And I can't wait to do that. But first I want, for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, or you're coming back and not quite sure what you're getting into as before, let's talk about Warrior versus Zombie. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, pastors, you name it, any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future. Today's guest, Barbara Cole Salmeron, is no exception. She is a true warrior on many levels. She's a speaker, a teacher, a coach, a consultant, a facilitator, stress relief specialist, meditation mentor, gong master, author, recording artist, certified infinite possibilities trainer and Reiki master, and has a company that she's the founder of, Empowered Relationships. Her 20-year journey has found her impacting and speaking to thousands, as well as living in the U.S., Mexico, Virgin Islands, Guinea, and Thailand. Her passion is ending the battle of the sexes and changing the world through harmonious and effective relationships. Barbara, welcome to Warrior vs. Zombie. Now tell me, how are you doing today with the relationships? Obviously, the challenges we have today are really tied up in what you do. So help me understand how you're dealing with all these exciting things that we have going on in our world today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dave. The trend right now, with so many people working from home, it definitely has created a shift in so many relationships, whether it be marriages, significant others, within the family dynamic, of course, many kids in school from home. And that can create a lot of tension within the family unit, within the home, right? We still need to go to work, even if we're doing that from home. We still need to produce a result. And the tensions, what I've seen from my clients and my friends, the tensions can rise because of this new dynamic that we find ourselves in. So, as with anything, I believe it's a new opportunity, a new way to learn more about ourselves and our loved ones, and a way to adapt and adjust and become stronger than we were before.
That's fascinating. I always love the spin or the way that warriors process what's going on. It's so refreshing, and frankly, whether you're an entrepreneur or health practitioner or whatever, just the fact that we look at what's going on and we realize that stopping and waiting isn't an option. We need to keep moving forward. So realizing that the area that you're in, it may present some unique challenges, even I'm sure in your own situation, I know it was the case in mine, working from home, all of a sudden you had coworkers you weren't used to. I work out of my home office, have done so 20 plus years at least, probably even more than that. And all of a sudden you have some coworkers that are there that weren't there before, and then trying to not only navigate the change to your own world, but also encompass other people in that daily routine in a different way has got to be challenging. And I think knowing your focus being on the difference between the way men process and women process, and different kinds of even approaches that different men and women, I would say that we're not all the same. I think we've had this conversation. In some respects, I think I process more like a woman, and my wife processes more like a man, if you were to kind of generalize. And I don't like labels or generalizations because I believe we're all unique. But anyway, so it's fascinating. Do you find that men and women are dealing with this? I know with your area of focus and passion, do we deal with this differently in your perspective?
Absolutely. And really, in my work, we look at certainly there are differences between men and women. And I love to educate people that there are differences between men and women down to our brain structure before we are even born. So, whenever anyone expects someone of the opposite sex to behave the way they think they should, or if I expect my husband to behave the way I would, I am setting myself up for failure and for disappointment. And believe me, I spent a lot of years doing that. However, so certainly there are gender differences, and there are differences depending on what mode we are in. Are we in a mode of productivity, which I call hunting mode, or are we in a mode of wanting to connect with someone, which I call gathering mode? So one is very useful at work, and one is very useful on the weekends when we're spending time with our loved ones. And they can definitely collide, especially in this working from home environment. When you have one person who is focused on producing a result, maybe they've still got an 8-hour workday, even though they're at home, and you've got the other person who wants to connect, so there can be all sorts of challenges there. And I help people figure out how to navigate that just the way that I've had to learn to navigate it.
Yeah, I think that is fascinating. And this is an area we'll never really kind of get totally through here. But I find that because of the change in venue, if you will, for behavior and how different people, both men and women and just different people in general, process or get through what I would call their ideal day, when you're forced into a situation where you have to rethink or reprocess how things are. One of the things in one of my guests, we were talking about boundaries. Just when does the workday end? You mentioned weekends versus weekdays and at work and not at work. But what happens when those lines are blurred? What happens when it's not social time now, in your mind, or you haven't finished the day and you're still in your office, but you happen to be in your home, right? And then all of a sudden your partner or your kids or whatever come in and say, okay, well, it's normally time you would be home. You're supposed to be in this other mode, but you're still in that mode. Do you find that with some of your clients?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And not only with my clients, but with myself. I have been a small business owner for many years, and I did not always have healthy boundaries between when it was time to shut the computer down and stop working. And truly that led to a decline in my health because of it. And before all of this happened, I owned 4 businesses. I did work mostly from home. And now I own 2 businesses, and I'm happier than ever. I sold one business and closed the other business and focused on just the 2 that I really love, which are much more about making a difference for people. And so I'm much happier now, doing less, and I still struggle with those boundaries. And in my household, just like what you mentioned, I am a woman who's in hunting mode most of the time. So I am work, and focused on productivity most of the time. And I really have to remind myself that I don't have to work until midnight every night. And my husband he'll even say he's in gathering mode more of the time. He has very strong boundaries. He stops working by about 5 o'clock every day, even though he has worked from home for years. So he's got wonderfully strong boundaries that way. And he identifies being in gathering mode more and more. He's all about connection and spending time together. And I love that too, but I've got to shift myself out of hunting mode and get into gathering mode to be there with him.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And I do remember your training and the hunting and the gathering delineation, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that in the third segment. We talk about where you're at today, because I know that's, as I often say, when I'm really, whether it's working on a book or podcast or specific talk that I'm doing, I get full of it, if you will, and that occupies a lot of space when I'm given the opportunity. So we'll come back to that. Well, this has been a good check-in. I think that our warriors have probably learned a few things about how to deal in this environment and kind of how you're processing it. And I really can't wait to get into the next segment where we talk about your story, kind of how you got to be all those things. That was quite an impressive list of things, from gong master to reiki master to relationship specialist to probably a whole lot of other things I missed in there. So I'm excited to hear about your 20-year journey, or however much of your journey you want to share with us in the next segment. So without any further ado, let's end this segment, move in here a little bit of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be back in just 30 seconds with Barbara Cole Salmeron and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not.
All right, welcome back to the second segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Barbara Cole Salmeron. And before we get started, we've had a great check-in with our warrior, and I want to make sure I give a shout out to our sponsor, Be Connected, where entrepreneurs connect, inviting our warriors to get in on the ground floor of a premier hub for successful warriors. Be Connected empowers warriors from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, home-based and small business owners, CEOs and founders, enabling them to connect and collaborate to create a larger impact in the world. So check us out at beconnected.com. That's BEEKONNECTED.com, and use the special code MyVisionWarrior when required. So again, that's Be Connected, BEEKONNECTED.com. All right, and we're back with Barbara. And Barbara, I really, really, really want to hear how you got to be where you are today. I want to hear a little bit about your story. We're all fascinated with all the things that you are and have been and are doing. And can you just bring us up to today? How did you get started? How did this 20-year journey begin, and how did you get to where you are today?
Right. Well, my journey of growth really did begin about 20 years ago. I was 25 years old, and I was married at that time. We were in Thailand, and I was having a time where I really felt like my marriage was failing. And I just kind of disappeared into the city of Bangkok and needed some alone time. And at that moment, at 25 years old, I decided that I would no longer read fiction. And because I was living overseas, I already was not watching TV, and we didn't have Netflix and all of these things back then. So I really just decided I was going to learn and pick up books and consume things that would feed my brain. I had an insatiable appetite for growth and learning, and I still do. And so it was at that time, feeling like my marriage was failing and needing to make a shift in my life. And back then I was also, this was not in the introduction, but I was also a boat captain and a scuba instructor and a tour guide around Thailand. Back when I used to apply for jobs, my resume really read like a fiction novel. So it was pretty fun. It got me a few interviews, even just for that. So I later found myself living in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, and just picking up books on all different topics. I wanted to learn about things that I knew nothing about. And so many of those were esoteric topics or just personal growth, spiritual, intuitive type things that would feed my soul. And so I just kept that up. And later, when I was back in the US, I was living in Florida, and I just started attending book study groups and retreats and workshops and meditation groups. And I remember some of my coworkers wondering how I did all of that. Easily 3 or 4 nights a week, I would be at a book study group or a meditation group, something like that. And on the weekends, I would be at a 1 day or 2 day retreat or seminar. And they said, how do you do all that? And I just looked at them and said, how do you not? How do you go to work and go home and watch TV and just do the same thing over and over again? I didn't get it. So that was really when my growth spurt, as I call it, began back at the age of 25. Then to fast forward, my marriage did end. We got divorced when I was 27, and I moved 4,000 miles away. We were living in Mexico. I moved to the Virgin Islands. Again, I was a boat captain and a scuba instructor back then, so I needed to be on the water. And I just continued to grow and learn. And as I began having new romantic relationships, I had a lot of failures. And today I refer to myself as going from hot mess to happily ever after. So I had a few relationships that lasted a few years. And then there was this 10-year period where all of my relationships were no longer than 4 months. So 3 or 4 months into a relationship, I would decide he's not the right guy for me. And I would just break up with him, usually blindsiding him because he didn't know there was anything wrong. I was not good at communicating my needs. I certainly was not good at boundaries. So I would blindside him by breaking up with him and then, heal my heart and move on to the next relationship. So fast forward 10 years, I'm living in Hawaii. And by that time I had done a lot of personal growth work that has just tremendously changed my life. And at some point I was able to really see it's not them, it's me. Because I kept creating the same result in these relationships. And what that was these relationships ending abruptly after 3 or 4 months. And they were all nice guys that I was dating because I don't date jerks. So they were all great guys. I owe a lot of apologies out there. But, they would only last about 3 or 4 months. And I was consistently becoming the mommy or the masculine in my romantic relationships with men. Ladies, I know you can hear this. I know you agree. You've maybe lived this. I did not want to be the masculine or the mommy in a romantic relationship with a man. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids. And it was around this time. So by this point, I'm 40 years old. So tick-tock, there's not much time left to have kids. So I'm realizing, okay, this decade of short, failed, painful relationships. And that's when I met my mentor, Allison Armstrong. I took a workshop with her called Understanding Men, and my eyes were completely opened to the differences between men and women and how our expectations create so much havoc in our relationships, and especially expecting men and women to behave the same or think the same or be the same in any way, because we're not. So it was after that workshop that I started to put into practice the things that I had learned from her. And my very next relationship is the one that I'm still in today. My husband and I met almost 5 years ago, and we were married 2.5 years later. And I now have 2 amazing stepkids. So my story has really turned around, and I truly feel like I have lived the hot mess to happily ever after experience. My husband and I often refer to our relationship as a level 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. And he's been so amazing and open. I've been able to introduce him to the world of personal growth, and he has really taken off. And so growth and service and giving back is just such an important concept in our lives. And to be able to finally have found a partner to do that with it's everything I've ever dreamed of. And because of this work with my mentor that changed my life, I continued to study with her and get certified and licensed by her to work with people in a similar way, teaching classes, coaching, and teaching people the secrets on how to have harmonious relationships, not just in a romance, but at work and with families and all of that. And so that's become my mission in life. I want to live in a world full of happy people. And Somewhere along the way there, I skipped this part of the story. I also was a meditation mentor for a long time. So during my growth spurt, I discovered meditation, and I realized that it was such a powerful tool to help with stress relief and happiness. I was very unhappy at the time that my therapist handed me my first meditation CD. And so I took off in that direction. And then I started teaching meditation. And then I became a gong master. That's a little tricky to explain, but it's a form of sound meditation. It's called harmonic therapy. And when the gongs are played correctly, it's very beautiful, and it slows our brain waves into theta and delta, and stress relieving, and gives people deeper sleep for the week afterwards, for several nights. And my most important thing around that is teaching. So I teach people how to play the gongs and to do what I do, whether it's for individuals as a private session or out there for groups. I've played at huge music festivals. I've played all over the world. I take the gongs. I still do this today. I did this 2 weeks ago. I take the gongs to other people's retreats all over the world, just to bring that gift that I have to share with them, to introduce them to this amazing technology. And so I'm a gong master teacher, and I'm this facilitator of relationship workshops, because teaching and traveling are my two passions. And so I've been very blessed to be able to combine those to live together. And all of that, as random as it all may seem, all of it feeds into my mission of wanting to live in a world full of happy people. And we can't be happy if our relationships are miserable, or if we're totally stressed out and our health is failing. So even though these two aspects of me seem very different, it's all contributing to my goal of creating a world full of happy people.
So what I'm hearing in your journey up to this point is one of relationship challenges of your own, and also a lot of internal zombies of expectation, and maybe being attached to an outcome that really wasn't reasonable to be attached to as you went along, and you discovered and overcame those zombies along the way. Is there any other thing along the way that you found to be a major disruptor, anything in particular, or was it just a continual, the 4-month relationships, wow. You've learned a lot of things. You seem to be really, maybe at 25 when you started the journey, you've learned a lot of, you became almost insatiable in terms of a learning, but then it's very clear that you immediately translate that and really were inspired. What I see as the energy that moved you along the path was your desire not only to learn it for yourself, but also share it with others. Does that sound right?
Exactly. At the age of 21, I became a scuba instructor when I was living in Mexico. And that's where I discovered my passion for teaching. And I literally had people's lives in my hands when you have them in the water or underwater. And I also became a boat captain at that time. And so that's when I discovered my love for both travel and teaching. And I would say, just as a quick side note, my first zombie showed up for me. This is going to sound a little woo-woo, but there's research out there to support it. My first zombie showed up for me before I was born. Throughout my childhood, and I believe while I was still in the womb, got the message that my parents wanted a boy. And anyone out there that has dealt with this, you may not realize, but we form beliefs about ourselves and about the world, especially our limiting beliefs about ourselves and the world and money and relationships, from conception to 8 years old. And if we don't do any work on ourselves, then we've got the 3-year-old running the show, or the 7-year-old. And so I had this zombie, as you say, of feeling like the unwanted child, because my parents got the boy. I have a twin brother. So I felt like the unwanted child. And so that led to me being the overachiever, trying to prove myself. I got all the good grades. I got all the scholarships and the awards. But it was just a trying to prove. It was this insatiable need. And to be honest and to look at these limiting beliefs that we form when we're young, those really don't go away. Most people aren't even aware of them. First, we have to become aware of them, and then we have to make conscious effort to work on them. So I am still a work in progress. I'm always working on that, loving myself, knowing that I deserve to be alive. You know, when you process this stuff on a deep level, it's powerful. But that's what brings me to one of my highest values, which is freedom. And working on our demons or our zombies is the only way to come through to the other side and become the warrior in our own lives and know that we are worthy and valuable. So that's the story of, I think, my initial zombie that I believe has affected me my entire life. And it's why I will always be into personal growth, spiritual growth, and I'll always be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so that's actually we're very aligned there, by the way, because when we talk, a lot of people, the zombie metaphor is kind of one that some people get afraid of or maybe even offended by a little bit. But the reality of it is we all have that zombie mind, that subconscious, that programming, if you will, that's kind of running in the background for everything we do. And whether it started, there's a lot of science these days behind the fact that it does start in our DNA, potentially even with our parents, not necessarily even while we were in the womb. So yeah, it's not woo-woo to me. I mean, it maybe was at one point, but I've been, in writing my book and things like that, looking into the why behind truth about the way people do things and understanding why and how it works. And that zombie mind is, as I always say, your program that runs in the background. 95% of the thoughts, the 60, 70,000 thoughts that are occurring in your mind today are the same thoughts you had yesterday and those same thoughts for the day before. And unfortunately, if you don't change the program and become aware of that through whether it's meditation or focusing on your vision for your future, your history becomes your destiny. And in fact, it may not even be the history that you experienced, but the one that was set in the DNA prior to it. So epigenetically, of course. But so yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, we're a little deeper than I normally get with the audience, but yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. Well, let's do this. We can pick up because it felt like you were had brought us right to kind of what you're doing today, and you have a current enlightenment and where you're going and so on. So we'll come back after this break, and I want to just explore kind of where you are today, why you're doing what you're doing today. And as I've already learned, that your life is very dynamic, and who knows what you'll be doing tomorrow. But for our guests, those that are listening here, that where are we going with this, and what kind of value, as you've gone forward and as you are going forward, that you see yourself providing. And then we'll be back and we'll finish with the landing the plane segment after that. So with that, let's take another quick break, listen to a little more of Ricky Jean Wright and It's Not the Getting There. And we'll be right back with Warrior vs. Zombie and Barbara Cole Salmeron.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and you.
All right, we're back with a third segment of Warrior vs. Zombie. And Barbara, you've been an amazing guest so far. I love the story, love the check-in. Let's talk a little bit about, I know everybody wants to understand where you are today, the things that you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, the value you provide, and if anything were possible, where would we go from here? So why don't you share a little of that with us as we get into this segment.
Okay, well, what my life looks like today is I am a speaker and a teacher, and I am an aspiring author. I'm working on an 8-book series that is based on 16 of the relationship classes that I teach. So we'll see how that turns out. 8 books based on those 16 classes. And what I'm really passionate about, as I mentioned before, is helping other people to see their blind spots. I call it illumination. And I've had to learn along the way that not everybody likes seeing those things. So I have to reserve some of that helpfulness for my coaching clients or for my students, because they are there and they are willing. I've learned that for the people who aren't willing to take a look at their blind spots, it doesn't matter how great the material or the coaching is. They're just not ready for it. And that's not a judgment at all, because I wasn't ready until I was ready. And that's what I have learned along the way. So what life looks like for me now, even before this COVID pandemic, I was teaching a lot online. And so obviously I'm continuing that. I'm very passionate about people having the material and the information that they need. Therefore, I don't price my work and my online classes at the 3-digit or 4-digit level. I keep it so very affordable because I truly want people to have the benefit that I have received from my mentor, from studying with her and going through her mastery program. Now, one of the things that has changed is with my stress relief business and in being a stress relief specialist, that sometimes is a private session that I do for people, but mostly I was working with groups around the country or in my new hometown here in Dallas or even around the world. And so that is something that has obviously changed quite a bit. As I said, my other passion is travel. So I have been a little restricted in that, although now I'm starting to travel again. So my shift has gone from being able to interact with people out there in the world and provide these classes and these stress relief sessions live and in person to probably 90% of what I do now is online. And at first, when this pandemic struck, I thought, well, okay, I get a little bit of a break. I'm ready for that. Most people wouldn't guess this about me, but I am actually an introvert. I like going out and speaking and teaching, which is kind of weird for an introvert. However, I do need a significant amount of recharge time and alone time and quiet. So initially I thought, okay, I just get a couple months off. That's great. Well, a couple months has turned into several more months. And I find now that I miss being around people and I miss being out there and interacting with them and sharing my gifts with them. So yes, most of my stuff is online now, whether it's the free videos or the classes that I have. However, I am getting out there more and more again as well. My coaching sessions I do over the phone or Zoom. And then something else unique that I do is based on the work of emotion code, body code, which are very, very powerful release sessions, again, done over the phone or over Zoom, and helping people to release not just those trapped emotions, but tons and tons of other things that the subconscious mind knows about, but so often our conscious mind does not. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working from home. And when I do travel, I'm working from my laptop, and I feel very blessed to be able to do that.
Well, I tell you, the one thing you said actually, I knew you were an introvert, by the way, because my wife is an introvert, and you'd be surprised. A lot of people would be surprised. They think introverted means that they're shy or people don't interact the same way with other people. It's not true at all. It's just, we talked about energy, right? And I get energy from being around other people. My energy level continues to go up nonstop, and I can't get enough of it because I'm an extrovert. But if you're an introvert, you do still need it, but you're putting energy in and it's draining you. And at some point at the end of the day, if you've done a lot of peopling or a lot of engagement, you find yourself drained. Whereas, and that's not because it's bad, it's just because we're all wired differently. So I think that's a beautiful thing. I like the fact that you have been doing this online, but yet you still recognize the value both to you and to your audience of that human interaction, which it's an interesting balance, as you know, when I run these networking groups, and having people that are just totally fine with staying on Zoom, and other people say, I don't want to do Zoom anymore, I want to be in the room. And you have to ultimately adapt, whether you're an introvert adapting to human interaction and or an extrovert trying to stay in your hole while everybody else, the world goes by. It's an interesting adaptation. So what else in terms of, if anything were possible, let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you provide a lot of value. You're a constant learner. So I see your teaching and your willingness to absorb a lot of information and then pass that on to the people that are brought into your sphere of influence, into your path. But if anything were possible, what would your impact be? What would your life look like in the future? You've talked about where you are, but where does this go from here?
Well, global for sure, because I am a travel junkie and a gypsy. My mom calls me a butterfly. And by the way, let me just say, my childhood was great. My parents were loving. I was not abused in any way. It was that self-limiting belief of being unwanted. I was never treated as if I was unwanted. So I just wanted to say that. And so moving forward, I really want to have a global impact. You know, I shared with you at a recent networking meeting that when I set goals for my business, it's not a dollar amount. It's how many people can I affect this year? How many people can I impact this month? That is what's important to me. I get goosebumps even as I talk about it, because even though as an introvert, when I'm working with people, I am so excited about their breakthroughs and their growth and their ahas that they have about themselves that I can just kind of be there to help them with. And then, yeah, afterwards, I need a little bit of rest. But big picture, you know, it's one of those things whenever they've asked the question, what's your dream job? And my answer comes so fast, and it has for years: write and teach and speak. Like, that is what I love to do. Again, it's about illumination and growth and providing valuable information that changes people's lives. So if I had it all my way, as we like to say, it would be traveling the world and working in a bit of fun vacation time there too. I wouldn't want to just be a road warrior, but being able to impact people on a bigger level. And so that really is why the books are being called forth right now, and why my classes need to be online, because I cannot be limited to just the people who are willing to show up in a room in the city that I live in. You know, it has to be more than that. I've just always been driven to work even more so with groups than with individuals. So that is my perfect life: traveling and teaching and bringing my husband along with me, and just having an impact, having the biggest impact I can, to the point where next week I'll be 46 years old, and I'm already thinking about my succession plan. I need to have this material set up in a foundation somehow that it lives beyond me, because the material is so important. It's not all about Barbara. I've been blessed to be able to learn and to grow from this material, and my passion for sharing it has to go well beyond my lifetime. So that has to involve a nonprofit. That has to involve something that lives beyond me, because the work cannot die with me. So that's aside from working on writing 8 books at one time, that's where I'm headed.
Well, that's awesome. Quite a vision, quite an aspiration. I love hearing, as I say, as we talked about, changing the world one dream at a time. That's a nice, beautiful dream, and does reach generations into the future. So, a legacy and having the impact that you have and impacting millions of people, that is a beautiful thing. And while you're living your ideal day, by the way, which is also something you brought into the equation here, which is very unique and insightful, because the reality of it is it's not the getting there, as the song says, it's the journey every day. So even though you're on a journey to your life purpose, to your cause, to the impacting of millions of people, you want to enjoy the journey. You want to take the people you love with you. You want to impact the right things and be present wherever you're at. So that's a really, really good summary, Barbara. And so, in fact, it's so good that I think we're just going to land the plane for this segment. And we're going to come back with the what I call the final land the plane segment, which is I want to hear if we take away any 1, 2, 3 things, you pick the number, those listening to this podcast, what would you want us to take away? And then we'll close it out by understanding how do we stay in touch with you? How can we get in touch with you and going forward? So with that, let's hear a little bit more from Ricky Jean Wright, and it's not the getting there. And we'll be right back with the final segment of Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
All right, we're back with the fourth and final land the plane segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Barbara Salmeron, and I'm so excited. It's been a great journey, and I really want to hear, Barbara, as I said before we took the break, if anything were possible as far as what we would take away from your podcast, what would you give us? What would you want the listener to take away? And then we'll talk a little bit about how to get in touch with you. So,
well, I'd like to first give you and all of the listeners my number one piece of relationship advice, if you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
It is replace criticism with appreciation. We often think that criticism will help improve our partners. Now, whether that's someone at work or our significant other, our honey, or our family, there's a whole lot that I can't go into, but criticism doesn't work, especially criticism directed towards men. There's no better way to get a man to shut down faster in a relationship than to criticize him. However, this applies for men and women both. Replacing criticism with appreciation can help you to grow your relationships, get the support that you need, get your needs met, and have better relationships than you've ever had before. And since all the material that I teach is based on human instinct, I'm actually certified and licensed in the field of human instinct. We like to ask these couple of questions when we see someone saying or doing something that we don't like, and we feel that tension and that discord arising. If we can stop and take a deep breath and just be curious and ask ourselves, what if nobody's misbehaving? And what if there's a good reason for that? Because when we can truly drop the expectations that we think we know how somebody should be behaving. Should is a judgment word, by the way. Whatever we say should or should not, that is a judgment. So if we can drop that and drop into curiosity, what if nobody's misbehaving? And what if there's a good reason for that? And then ask the right questions and have a genuinely open and curious conversation, our relationships can just blossom and flourish.
Well, that's awesome. Okay, so just asking the right questions and not having an expectation of outcome necessarily is it's pretty powerful. I mean, I think a lot of things we get hung up on expecting a certain answer to a question, even if it comes into an entrepreneur who wants to get a sale or building whatever kind of relationship, customer relationship, husband and wife, business partner, whatever it happens to be, going into that, and if you don't get the response you're looking for, then saying, what if that was the response I was supposed to get, or what if that was a reason for that, and then exploring that. That's a fascinating way of looking at that. So, well, this has been a great journey, Barbara. Don't want to take any more of your time, except that I do want to know, how can we get in touch with you, and how can we continue to move forward in a relationship with you as we go forward after this podcast?
Well, I can just send you to my main website, which is my name. So I'm going to spell that for you. It's barbarasalmeron.com, BarbarSalmeron.com. And all of my contact information is there. My phone number is all over social media. If you want to text me, that's the fastest way to reach me. You can also try emailing me. I may see it eventually. All my information is there, including links to my podcast, my blogs, and such. And then my online classes live at a subdomain of my website, which is grow.barbarasalmeron.com.
So grow.barbarasalmeron.com or barbarasalmeron.com, right?
That's it.
Sounds like a beautiful and easy way to connect with you. Well, again, Barbara, thank you for sharing with our audience. And is there anything else before we land the plane here that you would like to share?
Yep. I just want to share one more exciting, fun online event that I have coming up. It's called Rock Your Relationships. So again, notice the word relationships is always plural in my work, because it's whenever two human beings are interacting. So it is a 14-day challenge. It is so inexpensive, you won't even believe it. And you can find that at ryr.barbarasalmeron.com. So that is rock, like RYR as in rock your relationships .barbarasalmeron.com. And it's going to be a 3 weeks of us meeting weekly on Zoom. And I'll be giving you homework to implement into your life to create the most magical relationships at work, at home, and in romance. So I hope you can join us. That's going to be starting September 15th. However, if you're listening to this podcast and it's already gone past that, check that same link, because I will be doing this more than once, and I would love to meet you and help you to rock your relationships.
Well, that's awesome. I think everybody here wants to rock their relationships. So sounds like a great opportunity. So again, thank you for sharing that with us and everything else that you've done today. And I can't wait to continue to follow you on your journey, help as we move forward. And so with that, let's land the plane here. Remember, you can find Warrior versus Zombie wherever you found this podcast, but also you can get it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can find it on YouTube, and just literally anywhere that you're listening to your podcasts. And finally, thanks again to our sponsor, Be Connected, where you can get in on the ground floor of a premier hub for successful warriors. Be Connected empowers warriors from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, home-based and small business owners, CEOs and founders, enabling them to connect and collaborate and do as we always want to do, is make a larger impact in our world. So again, check us out at Be Connected, BeeKonnected.com. That's Be Connected with a K, and B like the bee, and use our special code MyVisionWarriors. So with that, we're going to end this episode of Warrior versus Zombie. Thanks again, Barbara. We loved this episode, and we'll hear a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright as we close out episode 22.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.